The smell hit me the moment I walked through the front door. Tomato sauce and ground beef. Again. I stood in the doorway, my work bag still hanging from my shoulder, and tried to remember the last time Sarah had cooked something different. Monday was spaghetti and meatballs. Tuesday was spaghetti and meatballs. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, all the same red sauce, same noodles, same everything. Now it was Saturday, and that smell was back. "Sarah," I called out, dropping my keys on the table. "Honey, I'm home." No answer. The house felt too quiet, like when you hold your breath underwater. I walked toward the kitchen, my footsteps echoing on the hardwood floors. The smell got stronger with each step. Sweet tomatoes mixed with something else, something that made my stomach turn. Sarah stood at the stove with her back to me. She wore the same yellow dress she'd put on Monday morning. Her dark hair hung in greasy strands around her shoulders. She stirred the pot with slow, careful movements like she was performing some kind of dance. "Hey, babe," I said, trying to sound normal. "Spaghetti again?" She didn't turn around. The wooden spoon made soft scraping sounds against the bottom of the pot. Scrape, 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 over and over. "Sarah, you okay?" Finally, she turned. Her face was pale, almost white. Dark circles hung under her eyes like bruises. But she smiled, that same bright smile she'd given me every day this week when I asked about dinner. "It's perfect," she said. Her voice sounded strange, like she was talking through water. "I made it just right this time." I walked closer and looked into the pot. The sauce was darker than usual, almost black in some spots. Chunks of meat floated on top, but they looked wrong somehow. Too big, too pale. "What kind of meat is that?" I asked. "The same kind," she said, still stirring. "The same as always." But it wasn't the same. I bought groceries every Sunday and we'd run out of ground beef on Wednesday. I knew because I'd checked the fridge Thursday morning when I was looking for something to make for lunch. The meat drawer was empty except for a package of chicken we'd been saving for the weekend. "Where did you get more beef?" I asked. She turned back to the stove. Scrape, scrape, scrape. I found some. The smell was getting stronger now. Under the tomato sauce, I could smell something rotten, something that had been sitting out too long in the heat. My stomach twisted and I had to step back. "Sarah, I think the meat might be bad. It smells..." "It's perfect," she said again. This time her voice was sharper. "I made it just right." I watched her stir the sauce. She moved the spoon in the same pattern each time. 3 circles clockwise, then 1 counterclockwise. 3 circles, 1 back. 3 circles, 1 back. Her movements were too smooth, too practiced, like she'd been doing this for years instead of days. "Maybe we should order pizza tonight," I said. "You've been working so hard this week." She stopped stirring. The silence stretched between us like a rubber band about to snap. Then she turned around and I saw something in her eyes that made me want to run. They were too bright, too wide, like she hadn't blinked in hours. "I made dinner," she said. "We're going to eat it." I nodded quickly. "Okay, sure. That sounds great." But it didn't sound great. Nothing about this felt right. Sarah loved to cook, but she never made the same meal twice in a row. She got bored too easily, always wanting to try new recipes she found online. And she was always clean when she cooked, washing her hands every few minutes and wiping down the counters. Now she stood there in her wrinkled dress, stirring that dark sauce with her dirty fingers. Her nails were black underneath, like she'd been digging in the garden. But we didn't have a garden. We lived in an apartment. "I'll set the table," I said, backing away from the stove. I pulled 2 plates from the cabinet, my hands shaking slightly. Through the kitchen window, I could see the parking lot where I'd left my car. It looked normal out there. People were walking their dogs and carrying grocery bags. The world was still working the way it was supposed to. In here, something was very wrong. I set the plates on our small dining table and grabbed forks from the drawer. Sarah was still stirring, still moving in that same pattern. 3 circles, 1 back. 3 circles, 1 back. The sound was starting to make my teeth hurt. "Is it almost ready?" I asked. "Almost," she said without turning around. "Just needs a few more minutes." I sat down at the table and tried to think. When had this started? Monday, she'd made spaghetti for dinner. Nothing weird about that. She'd seemed normal, talking about her day at work and laughing at something she'd seen on TV. Tuesday, spaghetti again. I joked about it, asking if she was trying to use up leftovers. She'd laughed and said she'd just been craving it. Still normal. Wednesday, when I walked in and smelled the same sauce, I'd felt a little annoyed. But Sarah had seemed happy, almost excited about dinner. She talked about how she was getting better at making it, how she was learning the right way to do it. Thursday, I'd started to worry. Not about anything scary, just normal husband worry. Was she depressed? Was work stressing her out? She'd barely talked during dinner, just watched me eat with that bright smile. Friday, she'd seemed different, quieter. She'd served the spaghetti and sat down across from me, but she hadn't touched her own plate. When I asked if she was feeling okay, she'd said she'd eaten while she was cooking. Now it was Saturday, and she looked like she hadn't slept in days. "Dinner's ready," she said. I looked up. She was walking toward the table, carrying the pot with both hands. Steam rose from the surface of the sauce, and that rotten smell came with it. She set the pot down in the center of the table, and I saw thick chunks of meat floating in the dark liquid. "It looks great," I lied. She sat down across from me and smiled. I got the recipe just right. "What recipe?" I asked. "I thought you were just making it up as you went." Her smile flickered for just a second. "The one I found." "Where did you find it?" "Downstairs." We lived on the 3rd floor. There was nothing downstairs except the lobby and the basement where people did their laundry. I'd been down there dozens of times and I'd never seen any recipes. "In the basement?" I asked. "Yes." She picked up the large spoon and scooped sauce onto my plate. The meat chunks were pale and stringy, not like any ground beef I'd ever seen. "Someone left it for me." "Who?" "The woman who lived here before us." I stared at her. We'd lived in this apartment for 3 years. Mrs. Chen had lived here before us, and she'd died of old age in her sleep. The landlord had told us about it when we'd signed the lease. Natural causes, he'd said. Nothing to worry about. "Mrs. Chen?" I asked. "She left me instructions," Sarah said, still spooning sauce onto my plate. "She wanted me to learn how to make it the right way." The smell was making my eyes water. I picked up my fork and poked at the meat. It was too soft, falling apart when I touched it. And it was the wrong color. Too pale, almost gray. "Sarah, what kind of meat is this?" She looked up at me with those 2 bright eyes. "The same kind as always." "But we don't have any ground beef. I checked the fridge." "I found some." "Where?" She was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "Mrs. Chen showed me where to find it." My fork felt heavy in my hand. "Mrs. Chen is dead, Sarah. She died 3 years ago." "I know." Sarah's voice was very soft now. "But she's still here." I set down my fork. The meat on my plate was starting to look less like ground beef and more like something else, something that had been torn apart instead of ground up. "I'm not very hungry," I said. "Maybe I should." "Eat," Sarah said. Her voice was sharp again. "I made it for you." I picked up my fork and took a small bite. The sauce was too salty, and the meat had a strange texture, chewy and tough at the same time. But worse than that was the taste. It didn't taste like beef at all. It tasted like something that had been dead for a long time. I swallowed quickly and reached for my water glass. "It's good," I said. "Really good." Sarah smiled and took a bite from her own plate. She chewed slowly, her eyes closed like she was enjoying the best meal of her life. "Mrs. Chen taught me the secret," she said after she swallowed. "She said I had to practice until I got it right. She said I had to make it the same way every time until I understood." "Understood what?" "How to find the right meat." I pushed my plate away. "I'm full." "You barely ate anything." "I had a big lunch." Sarah stared at me across the table. In the dim light of the kitchen, her face looked different, older somehow. Her skin was too pale, and her eyes seemed to have sunk deeper into her head. "Mrs. Chen said you might not like it at first," she said. "She said it takes time to develop a taste for it." "A taste for what?" "The meat." I stood up from the table. "I'm going to take a shower." "Finish your dinner first." "I'm not hungry anymore." Sarah's smile disappeared. "Sit down." Something in her voice made me freeze. It wasn't just angry. It was dangerous. Like a dog right before it bites. "Sarah, you're scaring me." "Sit down and eat." I sat back down slowly. Sarah's eyes never left my face. She picked up her fork and took another bite, chewing with that same slow, careful movement. "Tell me about Mrs. Chen," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "She was lonely," Sarah said. "She lived here by herself for 30 years. She never had any visitors, never had anyone to cook for. That's sad. She got hungry." "For what?" Sarah smiled again. But this time it was different. This time it was hungry. For company. I felt sick. The bite of meat I'd swallowed was sitting in my stomach like a rock. "What happened to her?" "She died. I know that. But how?" Sarah put down her fork. "She ran out of food." The apartment was too quiet. I could hear the fridge humming in the kitchen and the sound of footsteps in the apartment above us. Normal sounds, but they felt far away, like they were coming from another world. "What kind of food?" I asked. "The same kind I've been making." I looked down at my plate. The meat was floating in the dark sauce, and I could see what looked like bone fragments mixed in with the red. Not beef bones. Something else. "Where did you get this meat, Sarah?" "I told you. I found it." "Where?" "In the basement." "There's no meat in the basement." Sarah's eyes got that bright, dangerous look again. "There is, if you know where to look." I pushed my chair back from the table. "I need some air." "You need to eat." "No, I don't. Mrs. Chen said you would try to leave. She said men always try to leave when they find out." "Find out what?" "About the meat." I stood up and started backing toward the door. Sarah stood up too, but she didn't try to follow me. She just watched me with those hungry eyes. "I'm going for a walk," I said. "You can't leave." Watch me. I turned and walked toward the front door. Behind me, I heard Sarah's voice, soft and sing-song. She said they always come back. She said they get hungry too, eventually. I grabbed my keys from the table and headed for the door. But when I turned the handle, it didn't budge. The door was locked from the inside, but I couldn't see any way to unlock it. The deadbolt was turned to the open position, but the door wouldn't move. Sarah, the door is stuck. I know. I pulled harder, but it was like the door was glued shut. I ran my hands around the frame, looking for something that might be holding it closed. That's when I felt them. Thin pieces of metal driven into the wood around the door frame. Someone had nailed the door shut from the inside. "What did you do?" I asked. "I made sure you couldn't leave." I ran to the kitchen window and looked out at the parking lot. It was getting dark outside, and most of the other apartments had their lights on. Normal people were making normal dinners and watching TV with their families. "Sarah, you need to let me out." "No. People will wonder where I am. They'll come looking." Mrs. Chen said the same thing about her husband, but nobody came. I spun around. Mrs. Chen never had a husband. She did once. Sarah was walking toward me now, still carrying her fork. She made him the same meal every day for a week. He didn't like it either. What happened to him? He became part of the recipe. I grabbed a chair and swung it at the window. The glass cracked but didn't break. I swung again, harder this time. The window shattered and cold air rushed into the apartment. "Help!" I shouted out the window. "Somebody help me!" Sarah laughed behind me. Mrs. Chen tried that too. Nobody listens to screaming from this apartment anymore. I looked down at the parking lot. A few people were walking around, but none of them looked up. It was like they couldn't hear me at all. "She soundproofed the walls," Sarah said. "She had to, because of all the noise." "What noise?" "The cooking." I climbed up on the windowsill. It was a 3-story drop, but maybe I could grab onto the fire escape on the second floor. But when I looked down, I saw that the fire escape was gone. There were just bolt holes in the brick where it used to be attached. "She took that down too," Sarah said. "She was very thorough." I climbed back down from the window. Sarah was standing in the middle of the living room, still holding her fork. In the light from the broken window, I could see that her clothes were stained with something dark. "How long have you been planning this?" I asked. "I haven't been planning anything. Mrs. Chen has been planning it." "Mrs. Chen is dead. Her body is dead, but she's still here. She's been waiting for someone to teach." I backed away from Sarah, trying to get to the bedroom. Maybe I could lock myself in there and figure out another way to escape. "She started visiting me in my dreams," Sarah said, following me slowly. "She showed me things, recipes, techniques. She taught me how to prepare the meat properly." "What meat?" I asked, even though I didn't want to know the answer. "The meat from the people who lived here before us." I felt the bedroom door behind me and grabbed for the handle, but it was locked too. I rattled the door, but it wouldn't open. "I locked all the doors," Sarah said. "Mrs. Chen told me to. She said you would try to hide." "Sarah, this isn't you. This is some kind of breakdown. We can get help." "I don't need help. I need to finish dinner." She raised the fork, and I saw that the tines were longer than they should be, sharper. She'd filed them into points. "The meat is getting cold," she said. I ran toward the kitchen, looking for something to defend myself with, But when I got there, I saw that all the knives were gone. The drawer where we kept them was empty. Mrs. Chen hid them, Sarah said from behind me. She said sharp things make people do stupid things. I grabbed the pot of sauce from the table and threw it at her. She dodged, and the pot hit the wall behind her. Dark sauce splattered everywhere, and chunks of meat fell to the floor. That's when I saw what the meat really was. It wasn't beef. It was pieces of people. Fingers and toes and chunks of something that might have been parts of a face. The sauce was thick with fat and bits of hair. I threw up right there on the kitchen floor. "Now look what you've done," Sarah said. She sounded disappointed, like I'd spilled juice on the carpet. I worked so hard on that. I wiped my mouth and looked up at her. "You're sick. You need help." "I'm learning." Mrs. Chen said it would take time to get it right. Get what right? The cooking, the preparation, the way you have to take care of the meat so it doesn't spoil. I realized she was talking about me. I was the meat. "How long have you been planning to kill me?" I asked. "I wasn't planning to kill you. I was planning to cook you. It's the same thing." "No, it's not." Mrs. Chen explained the difference. Killing is quick. Cooking takes time. You have to do it slowly, carefully, so the meat stays tender. She was moving toward me again, still holding that sharpened fork. I backed away until I hit the kitchen counter. "Mrs. Chen's husband fought too," Sarah said. "But he got tired eventually. They always get tired." "How many people has she killed?" "She didn't kill anyone. She cooked them." "How many?" "Everyone who lived in this apartment after her husband. The couple who moved in after she died. The man who lived here before us. And now you." I grabbed a plate from the counter and threw it at her. She caught it and set it down gently on the table. "Mrs. Chen said you would try to break things. She said men always try to break things when they're scared. I'm not scared, I'm disgusted." "That's okay. You'll taste better if you're upset." Mrs. Chen said fear makes the meat more tender. I looked around the kitchen for another way out. The window was too small to climb through, and the door to the apartment was still nailed shut. I was trapped. "What happened to the other people who lived here?" I asked. "They became dinner, just like you're going to." "And you're going to eat them?" "I'm going to eat you. The others were just practice." She lunged forward with the fork, but I grabbed her wrist and twisted it. She dropped the fork, and it clattered across the floor. "You're hurting me," she said. "Good." I pushed her away and ran for the front door. I grabbed a kitchen chair and started smashing it against the door frame, trying to pull out the nails that were holding it shut. "You can't leave," Sarah said. "Mrs. Chen won't let you." "Mrs. Chen is dead. She's standing right behind you." I turned around, but there was nobody there. Just Sarah rubbing her wrist where I'd grabbed her. "You're crazy," I said. "I'm learning." I went back to working on the door. One of the nails was starting to come loose. If I could get enough of them out, maybe I could force the door open. "She's getting impatient," Sarah said. "She wants me to start cooking you now. Tell her to wait." "I can't. She's hungry." I got another nail loose. The door was starting to give a little bit. "She said to tell you that fighting will only make it worse," Sarah said. "She said if you cooperate, she'll make it quick." "I'm not cooperating with anything." "She said you would say that too." I got a third nail out. The door was definitely loose now. I could see a crack of light from the hallway. "Please don't leave me," Sarah said. Her voice sounded different now, smaller, like she was scared. I turned around. She was crying, but the tears looked wrong. They were too thick, too dark. "Sarah, what's happening to you?" "She's inside me now. She's been inside me for days. I can feel her in my head, telling me what to do." "Fight her." "I can't. She's too strong." I pulled out another nail. The door was almost free. "Help me," Sarah said. "Please." I looked at her face. For just a moment, I could see the real Sarah underneath, scared and confused and asking me to save her. How? I don't know. She won't let me think. I got the last nail out and pushed on the door. It opened a crack, just enough for me to see the hallway outside. "I can get help," I said. "I can call the police." "She won't let you. She'll make me stop you." "Try to fight her." "I can't." Sarah's face changed again. The scared look disappeared and that hungry smile came back. "Nice try," she said. "But Mrs. Chen is done playing games." She picked up the fork from the floor and started walking toward me. I shoved the door open and ran into the hallway. "Help!" I shouted. "Somebody help me!" The hallway was empty. I ran to the apartment next door and pounded on the door. "Help me, please!" Nobody answered. I could hear a TV on inside, but nobody came to the door. I ran to the next apartment and pounded on that door too, still nothing. Behind me, I heard our apartment door slam shut. Sarah was inside, but she wasn't trying to follow me. She was just waiting. I ran to the stairs and started going down. At the second floor, I tried more doors. Nobody answered. It was like the whole building was empty except for me and Sarah. At the first floor, I found the main door to the building. It was locked, but I could see the street through the glass. There were people walking around outside, cars driving by. Normal life was happening just a few feet away. I pounded on the glass. "Help me! I'm trapped!" The people outside couldn't hear me. They walked past like I wasn't there. I tried the door to the basement. It was unlocked. The basement was dark and smelled like old water. I found a light switch and turned it on. The bulb was dim, but I could see washers and dryers lined up against the walls. And in the corner, something else. A freezer. Old and white and humming softly. I walked over to it and lifted the lid. Inside were plastic bags full of meat. Lots of meat. More than any normal person would need. The pieces were cut up and wrapped carefully, like someone had taken a lot of time to prepare them. I picked up one of the bags and looked at it closely. Through the plastic, I could see what looked like a human hand. I dropped the bag and backed away from the freezer. That's when I saw the other things in the corner. Clothes folded neatly in piles. A man's shirt, a woman's dress, a pair of shoes. The clothes from all the people who had lived in our apartment. I heard footsteps on the stairs behind me. Sarah was coming down. "I told you not to go down there," she said. "Mrs. Chen doesn't like people looking at her supplies." I turned around. Sarah was standing at the bottom of the stairs, but she looked different now. Older. Her hair was gray and her face was wrinkled. "Mrs. Chen?" I asked. "Hello, dear," she said in Sarah's voice. "I've been waiting to meet you." "Where's my wife?" "She's still here. She's just taking a little nap while we talk." "What did you do to her?" "I taught her how to cook. She was a very good student. I backed away from her, but there was nowhere to go. The basement was just one room with no other exits. Why? I asked. I was lonely. I spent 30 years in this building with no one to talk to, no one to cook for. When I died, I thought it would be over, but I was still here, still lonely. So you possessed my wife? I taught her. There's a difference. You made her kill people. I made her cook. The people were just ingredients. She was walking toward me now, and I could see that she was carrying a knife, a big one, like the kind used for cutting meat. Your wife is very talented, she said. She learned so quickly, much faster than my husband did. You killed your husband? I cooked him. He was my first meal after I died. He was delicious. I grabbed one of the bags of meat from the freezer and threw it at her. She dodged, and the bag hit the wall behind her. That's very rude, she said. I worked hard to prepare that. I threw another bag, then another. She kept dodging, but I was buying time, trying to think of a way out. You can't leave, she said. I won't let you. Watch me. I ran toward the stairs, but she was faster. She grabbed my arm and spun me around. The knife was inches from my face. I'm going to enjoy cooking you, she said. You have good meat, lean and healthy. You're insane. I'm hungry. She raised the knife, but before she could bring it down, something hit her from behind. She fell forward, and the knife clattered across the floor. I looked up and saw Sarah standing behind her. The real Sarah, not the thing that had been pretending to be her. Run, she said. I can't hold her back for long. I ran for the stairs, but behind me I heard Sarah scream. When I turned around, she was on the ground, and Mrs. Chen was standing over her with the knife. You shouldn't have done that, dear, Mrs. Chen said. Now I'll have to start over with someone else. She looked at me. But first, I need to finish with you. I ran up the stairs as fast as I could. Behind me, I could hear her following. But she was slow. Being dead for 3 years had made her clumsy. I reached the first floor and ran to the main door. It was still locked, but I could see the street outside. I picked up a chair from the lobby and threw it at the glass door. It cracked but didn't break. I threw it again, harder this time. The glass shattered, and cold air rushed in. I climbed through the broken glass and ran into the street. Behind me, I could hear Mrs. Chen screaming, "You can't leave! You belong to me!" I ran to the first person I saw, a woman walking her dog. "Help me!" I said. "Call the police." She looked at me like I was crazy. "Are you okay? You're bleeding." I looked down. The broken glass had cut my arms, but I didn't care. "There's a woman in that building," I said, pointing back at the apartment. "She's trying to kill me." "What woman?" "Mrs. Chen. She's been dead for 3 years, but she's still there. She made my wife cook people." The woman backed away from me. "I think you need help." "I need the police." She pulled out her phone and called 911. While we waited, I told her everything that had happened. She didn't believe me, but she stayed with me until the police arrived. When the cops got there, they went up to the apartment. They found Sarah in the basement, unconscious but alive. They found the freezer full of meat, and they found the clothes from all the people who had disappeared, but they didn't find Mrs. Chen. Sarah spent 2 weeks in the hospital. When she woke up, she didn't remember anything that had happened. The doctors said it was trauma. that her mind had blocked out the memories to protect her. I didn't tell her about Mrs. Chen. I didn't tell her about the meat in the freezer or the people who had been cooked. I just told her that she'd had a breakdown and that everything was going to be okay. We moved out of the apartment as soon as she was released from the hospital. We found a new place across town, in a building that had never had any mysterious deaths. But sometimes late at night, I can still smell that sauce. Tomato and ground beef and something rotten underneath. And sometimes when Sarah is cooking dinner, I catch her stirring the pot in that same pattern. 3 circles clockwise, 1 counterclockwise, 3 circles clockwise, 1 counterclockwise. And when she does that, I can see Mrs. Chen standing behind her, smiling that hungry smile, waiting for her next student,